Wonderful. It is just about 10:40 in the morning on January 19th. Ben Schachter from Total Brokerage, training with the wonderful folks from Southern Classic Realtors in Georgia. Today, we are going to be going through transaction management and compliance procedures. We're leaving lots of time for Q&A. The previous sessions that we trained you on was more of me talking at you and then a few questions here and there. I want this to be much more of a dialogue today because a lot of you have gotten into the heavy lifting of total brokerage. So I want to give you as much time as you need to ask questions. So here's how we're going to handle it since there's more than 60 of you on the call. When I go into Total Brokerage to share my screen with you, it's basically going to cover my entire screen. So it's going to be very hard for me to see if there's a question. So the best way to pose a question, if it's okay with you, I'm going to rely on James. Please go ahead and either type it in the chat log, and I'm going to ask James to read it to me, or if you feel the need to speak aloud, that's totally fine. You can speak aloud. Just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, because if you're jumping up and down with your hand raised, I'm not going to see you because Total Brokerage is covering my entire screen. I'm never, ever going to ignore you, but I just don't see you waving and putting your hand up. So either type it in the chat log and James will get my attention, or feel free to unmute yourself. I'll be happy to answer a question. James has a comment.
Yes, I've already put out, I want to hold all questions to the time we're done, Ben, and go through the whole session. At the end of the session, anybody that feels good that wants to get off the call, they can, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. That way we're guaranteed to get through everything and be more effective is why I like to do it. So
you got it. You're the boss.
If everybody would just simply, if they have a question, we're in a particular tab, jot it down on a little piece of paper. And then when we get done in about an hour and 10 minutes, then we'll open up for the last 20 minutes or so, just all questions and concerns. I just think that way we have ample amount of time to get through everything, and we will be more effective and efficient that way.
Okay, perfect, fantastic. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to start the screen share right now. Wonderful. Everyone should know how to log in by now. It is SCR, your abbreviation for Southern Classic Realtors, .totalbrokerage.com. scr.totalbrokerage.com. In the unlikely event you don't know how to log in, once you go to scr.totalbrokerage.com, please go ahead to the bottom of the screen where it says click here to reset your password. Type in your email address, the one that James has provided to me. So wherever you and James communicate with one another, that's the email address he provided to me. And we've already set up your account for you. So you can go ahead and log in. So I'm going to log in naturally here. Now, if you don't want to have to type in your password every single time, you are free to click this button that says remember me. And then you won't have to type it in each time. Okay, we are now in Total Brokerage. I know we spent a lot of time talking about the dashboard during our prior training sessions, the statistical reporting widgets, the calendar integration, the daily to-do list. So I'm going to bypass all that right now, but I'm happy to address that in the Q&A portion later on if you have questions. And we're going to go right into transactions. Now, there's two ways to start a transaction in Total Brokerage. You can do so either by starting at the CRM, which stands for Customer Relationship Management, and you can start by adding a contact here. When you add a contact, you must have a first and last name, and you must have at least one form of communication. So you either have to have a phone number or an email address. Now, most people expect you to have an email address because if you're beginning a transaction, the likelihood that you're going to be electronically transmitting documents to your customer is very high. In our software, you can text out or email documents. I'll show you that a little bit later. But please remember, to save a customer in our CRM, you must have a first and last name and a minimum of one form of communication contact, so either an email address or a phone number. The second way that you can launch a transaction in Total Brokerage is on the left-hand menu. You can go directly to transactions, which is about halfway down, and you can go into the transactions by pushing View Transactions. It's the second part of the drop-down. When you push View Transactions, you'll notice on the bottom of the screen, on the top of the screen, you can launch a transaction directly from here. Under Actions, you can export or reassign your transactions, right? Matt, where is the launch transaction, create a new transaction here? Top right, actions button, excuse me. The actions button right here, you can create your transaction from here as well. So this will take you inevitably to the exact same spot as the CRM. So you have a choice to start in either location, the CRM or here, okay? You're gonna have to go through and answer these transactions questions. This is what we call our transaction wizard. There's a series of questions that James has designed, and the purpose of these questions is for the software to be able to assemble all the necessary documents for you to launch that new transaction. So you're not going to be able to bypass these questions. And if you do mistakenly rush through and answer the questions incorrectly, you're going to get frustrated because the system is going to give you wrong documents. Please think of this process in the transaction wizard almost the same as a recipe. If you're baking a cake and you refuse to read the ingredients and you just start throwing flour and sugar and salt in a bowl, that cake is going to taste terrible. You're not going to be happy. It's probably going to get trashed. If you take your time to follow the steps, the cake is quite simple to make because it gives you exact specifications. So please take the extra 30 or 60 seconds to patiently read these questions and then select the proper drop-down answer for each question. After you've gone through and done that, you have a choice at the bottom of the page. You can either create your transaction without forms, or you can create your transaction with forms. Why would someone select create transaction without forms? Well, what if you already have a transaction for an existing listing? If you're the listing agent, you already have your listing agreement in this transaction. Now Coldwell Banker or Remax wants to present an offer on your listing. You may not necessarily need all the documents repopulated, because if Coldwell Banker and Remax have done their job properly, they are presenting you a complete contract with all the requisite disclosures and documents. So you're still going to go through and answer all the questions in the wizard above, but you're going to click Create Transaction Without Forms so the total brokerage does not crowd or fill your transaction with a whole bunch of blank documents, because Remax or Coldwell Banker has probably sent you those documents. However, a good portion of the time, you're going to click the blue button on the right-hand side, Create Transaction, and that means all of the documents will be gathered together for you that are all assembled based on how you answer these questions, right? If you need a homeowners association disclosure and you check no here, it's not going to populate the homeowners documents. You have to make sure you check yes. If you need a lead-based paint disclosure and you skip this question, it's not going to generate the lead-based paint disclosure. So it's very important you answer these questions properly, because when you click Create Transaction on the bottom right, the software is going to go into our forms library and gather together all the necessary documents for you. James, I see the chat log is blowing up. Do you want me to continue going, or do you want me to take a break here for a second?
You're good. I'm handling that. I do want to touch base real quick on this page. If you could scroll back down just a little bit there, Ben. Where it says right there, the checklist, and it says today SCR commercial buyer. As I continue to tweak this, obviously if you're working with a buyer on a residential, you would come down and just check the buyer checklist. But as we continue, I am working with Total Brokerage on creating us a commercial checklist for buyers and sellers, and new construction for builders and buyers. So that's kind of why you see that down there. So I've already had someone today ask me about that. You would just go in and fix it there, or you can fix it in the checklist tab itself in the actual transaction that we'll get to in just a little while.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that point of clarification. So again, quick recap. To get to the transaction wizard, you can either click Add a Contact, put in a first and last name and one form of communication, either an email address or a phone number, and then push Save, and that's going to give you the chance under the action button to launch a transaction. Or alternatively, you can go right to Transactions, click View Transactions on the left-hand side, and at the top of the page it says Actions, Create a Transaction. So either one of those options will inevitably take you to the same place. Now, because James has spent considerable time putting together a transaction, I am not going to launch a new transaction. I'm actually going to search for the file that James has created for us today, because it's already done for us. It's going to speed along the process. So I am going to look for that transaction. Just bear with me one moment here so I can bring up the existing transaction that James created. And here it is, 1170 Baxter Court. This is what we're going to use for training today. Okay. Is that good, James?
That's perfect. That's
okay, perfect.
Actually.
Wonderful. So now we are in the transaction itself for 1170 Baxter Court, and the customer's name happens to be James Hamby. This naming process at the top, you can name your file whatever you want. Now, I don't know if James has a certain process, first name, last name, first name, address, county, what have you. This is completely editable, the name field. So James, do you want them following a certain process of how they're going to name these transactions?
Yes, I do want the address in there. That's why I said to the right, it would normally say transaction for James Hamby, but in this case, you simply type on that, type the address and a dash and put the client's name there. And that will
Perfect.
help us down the road that in the event that you're working with a client and that client this year buys 3 different houses, we're not seeing transaction for James Hamby 3 different times. We're being very specific on the transaction in the general tab right here, naming that property.
On that line of thinking, not only is it confusing if James Hamby buys 3 houses, what if James Hamby buys 1 house, but he makes 4 offers on 4 different homes and gets outbid on all 4? You've got 4 transactions for 1 transaction. So that's why it's important, as James said, to put the property address in there, because each time your buyer makes an offer on a different property, you're going to start with a fresh new file, because it's a lot more work to erase all the existing customizations for that 1 transaction in Stratham, Georgia, as opposed to the customer changing his mind and deciding to buy in Atlanta, Georgia. So it is important you put the property address in there, okay? The next thing that you'll notice here on the screen is what type of customer this is. That's auto-populated for you, buyer, seller, landlord, tenant. The next thing you'll see is status. All of your files by default are active, and you're going to remain and leave them as active unless they change status. If a deal goes pending because it goes under contract, or if it's closed or rented, or if it's just dead because the buyer got outbid, you can change the status of the transaction. But for the time being, we're going to leave it as active.
I want to interject there too, if you don't mind,
Please,
Ben.
go right
The
ahead.
agent can only change the status from active to pending to dead. The only person that will change a status of the transaction after it closes is Sandy. She will itemize the DA versus our HUD settlement statement, and when it's done, she will mark the transaction closed.
And that's important for everyone to remember, because when you mark the file as closed, it locks it down completely for compliance and storage purposes. So you don't want to mark your file closed without Sandy doing it, because you're actually locking yourself out of your own transaction, and it becomes view only at that point in time. So follow James's instructions and wait for Sandy to lock it down in closed status. If you accidentally lock a file down into closed status, you're going to have to contact James or somebody else in management to reactivate the file, because once you lock it down in view only, an agent cannot uncheck that or go backwards. You have to have management revert to activate that file for you. The next thing you'll see is the transaction email address. This is automatically populated by Total Brokerage. The format is always the same. When a file is created, the file transaction email address is always the realtor's first name, the middle name, if the realtor has a middle name, the last name, the year the file was created, and the customer's last name. The number 1 that you see here indicates that this is the first transaction in the year 2021 that James Hamby, the agent at SCR, created for his customer, Mr. Hamby. If James goes ahead and makes a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th contract for this customer, this number is going to go up to 2, 3, and 4, etc. And it's always the same suffix at scr.totalbrokerage.com. So for example, my name is Ben Schachter. I have a customer by the name of Donald Duck. If I want to send documents into Donald Duck's transaction, I don't have to necessarily look up the transaction email address. I know for certain the email address is ben.schachter.2021.duck for Donald Duck, the number 1, because I've only done 1 deal this year for Donald Duck, and scr.totalbrokerage.com. Inevitably, if I do a transaction for Buzz Lightyear, ben.schachter.2021.lightyear1 at scr.totalbrokerage.com. Do you have to memorize that? Absolutely not. Is it always going to be readily available here? Can you always easily copy it and paste it? Yes, you can. But once you use Total Brokerage for a couple of weeks and you're wrapped up in a few transactions, you're going to start to remember the email address, because you're going to know the format. Your first name, your last name, the year, the customer's last name, number 1 at scr.totalbrokerage.com. This is really helpful when an appraiser, when a title company, when a mortgage company, when an underwriter from a bank contacts you and says, hey, Martin, hey, Mike, hey, Julie, I've got documents to send over. Could you do me a favor, please? Instead of sending those emails to juliemauk@google.com or gmail.com, could you please send it to julie.mauk.2021.duck at scr.totalbrokerage.com. That way, the appraisal, the home inspection, the mortgage contingency letter will all go right into my file. Now you're probably wondering, that's great if the documents go right into my file, but how am I ever going to know that the documents have been delivered? Total Brokerage will alert you by email or text, your choice, or both. Congratulations, Julie. The appraiser just sent the appraisal into your file. Here's a direct hyperlink to the appraisal so that you can see it if you wish to review it. So you still get an email or text notification to your personal inbox, whether it's your email or your cell phone for texting purposes, alerting you to the fact that that document you've been waiting for has been delivered. This just skips a number of steps so that you don't have to remember to file everything away. Do you have to use that feature? Absolutely not. If Julie Malk wants everything sent to her Gmail, go ahead, Mr. Appraiser. Just send it to juliemalk@gmail.com. And when I get home tonight and I see it in my inbox, I will forward it. I will upload it myself into Total Brokerage. Either way, we're just trying to show you some shortcuts. Any comments on that, James?
No, you're good.
Okay, perfect. So
And let me say that if they do decide to upload that into their documents themselves and they copy this, when that document comes into the email tab, because it is coming from them, it's automatically going to populate back in their documents tab. However, if it comes directly from a third-party source, it's going to stay in the email tab because we want to protect the agents with any spam or junk that could come into that email tab. So they'll have to go into the email tab and then click a button in that email and input it into documents. So from the agent, it's going to automatically appear in documents. From a third-party source, the system is protecting junk and things of that nature. So it makes it really nice to know that if you do decide to put that in your documents tab, that it's protected because you know the source.
That's correct. Absolutely right. And I'll show them that when we go through the tabs.
Yes,
Down
sir.
here's a notes box. You can type absolutely anything you want in this notes box. It's really a free-form field. However, one of the cool things you can do in the notes box, other than typing random text, is you can actually insert hyperlinks. So let's assume that you went out to the Macon, Georgia property appraiser's office, and let's assume you found the deed for this property. Now, I am not familiar with this website. You guys probably are. I could find the deed, I could find a lien on the property, and I can go right to the top of the page and I can grab that hyperlink, which would include the entire HTTPS : the whole thing. And I can go right into Total Brokerage and I can drop that right here. And now you'll see it becomes a retrievable link in my file. So I can put as many hyperlinks as I want. Maybe you want to put in Google Images. Maybe you want to put the Zillow listing on the property. Any website that you wish, as long as you grab the full website out of the address bar of your browser, you can paste it in here. So if I found this property on Zillow and I wanted to see the Zillow link for the property, I can go ahead and grab it with a copy and paste scenario, go right back to Total Brokerage, and I can paste that right here. And now I've got 2 links available to me. So it's a free-form text box that also doubles as a place to drop hyperlinks of things you may want to retrieve in the future. I'm always going to save my work. I urge you to get in the habit of saving early and saving often. Many of our pages have an autosave feature, and it clearly will say on the bottom right corner, this material will be autosaved. This page is not one of them. We are in the process of upgrading all of our pages to autosave. So please make sure you're extra careful to save your work. We don't want you losing anything that you've done. Next tab is Documents. Documents tab is really important because, of course, this is going to show me all of the paperwork that I have on this transaction. Now, there's 4 ways to bring documents into your Documents tab for 1170 Baxter Court customer name Hamby. The first way we've already went through. That was the Forms Transaction Wizard. That's where I answered 6 or 7 different questions with drop downs. I pushed Create Transaction, the blue button on the bottom right, and the software intuitively went into my forms library and gathered together all the requisite paperwork. That's the best way, that's the most convenient way, and that is the way that's going to have the least errors and mistakes. The second way we've also covered already. Under the General tab, I've shown you the transaction email address where you can easily email documents directly into this transaction. And as James mentioned, if you email them in yourself from your Total Brokerage email account, they'll go directly into documents. If you email them in from a mystery email address, like some random AOL or some random Mail South that Total Brokerage is unfamiliar with, or if the appraiser, the home inspector, the mortgage company email them in, they will still go into the transaction, but they'll first be held in a waiting period area, which we call the email file folder. I'll show you that in a bit. So that's 2 ways. Transaction Wizard, way number 1, transaction email address, number 2. The third and fourth way to get documents into your Documents tab is if you go to the Actions button at the top right, plus add a form, plus add a form will take you into Total Brokerage's forms library, where you can select from a large menu of PDFs that James has already uploaded and mapped for you so they're e-fillable and e-signable. Again, actions plus add a form takes you into the existing forms library so you can select from what's available on the menu. And the fourth and final way to bring documents in under the actions menu is upload a PDF. And just as you would expect, that allows you to go to the desktop of your computer and update and upload PDFs. Now, please keep in mind, if you're uploading PDFs from your desktop of your computer, they will not be mapped for e-filling. They will not be mapped for e-signing and e-initialing. Can you do that? Yes, that's another process I will show you. But when you straight upload from your desktop, those are raw documents in PDF format that are not e-fillable or e-signable until you manipulate them. James, any questions you'd like me to address or comments at that point?
If you don't mind, click on add forms real quick.
Sure. Add a form takes us into the forms library here. And now I can select the different library options.
Yeah, start typing the word amendments at the search bar. When you do that, all the amendments that are out there in our Georgia Association of Realtors forms pops up. And all you have to do is check on one, hit the add button, and it automatically pulls right into your documents tab for you to work.
I want these 3 amendments to be imported into Total Brokerage, so I checked on them. And down here at the bottom of the screen, I'm just going to click on the plus add button. When I do that, it actually takes those 3 documents that are pre-mapped and available to me and now drops those 3 amendments right here into the 1170 Baxter Court transaction.
Right. So if you type the word contingent, amendment, CV pamphlets, any of those things, DA, that's going to auto-populate for us. So there, boom, DA, there's our 2 DAs right there. So it's really user-friendly once you learn the system. It's a learning curve, everybody, but you'll get through it. It's easy once you start messing with it more and more.
Now, in the documents folder, you have a status column, which you see here. It's the second column. It shows you the status of the document. Everything that says editing means that you can edit the document. You can add strikeouts, you can add text boxes, you can add signatures, initials, you can delete fields. You have complete creative capacity to edit the documents. Once a document is signed, you can no longer meddle with the document. If documents are out for signature, it'll say out for signature, or it'll say partially signed. Maybe you have a husband and a wife, and the husband has signed, but the wife has not. So it's important you recognize the status of your documents, okay? Down here, you have a variety of folders that you can actually file away your documents. And if I realize, oh boy, I have 2 different DAs in this file, the commission DA and the Hamby DA, I did not need both. That was a mistake. I'm going to get rid of the Hamby DA because I did not want that or mean to bring it in. So I'm going to go to the operations button and I'm going to archive the Hamby DA. So I got operations archive. It now takes it out of the main document folder and suppresses it down at the bottom here for my archive documents. So there is no delete key. You can file things away, you just cannot delete them. Once they're in Total Brokerage, they're going to stay in Total Brokerage. If I want to check out what this amendment to authorize a buyer to make repairs is, I can click right on it because this is an edit status, and I can see this is completely editable by me. Very, very simple. I can type in the fields and make whatever changes that I want. Very, very easy to use. If I wanted to cross out this entire paragraph, this is just a hypothetical. I have 2 ways to make changes on the page. I can either push add, and it gives you a menu of things that I can choose from, such as add a strike-through box. And if I do that, it'll drop that strike-through box on the top of the page. I can then take my mouse and shift it down here to wherever I want it, and I can space that out however I see fit, and I can strike out that line. Okay, or I can take my mouse instead of the add feature and I can right click and I can add here, whatever I want to use. So you've got the option of using either the add button on the top of the page or the add feature here. If I take this box and I want to take out paragraph number 2, I can take out paragraph number 2, just that simply. Preview. The eyeball, we use our eyeballs to see things. When I click the preview button with the eyeball, it shows me what this is going to look like. I've stricken out this entire paragraph with a big box, and I've stricken out just this line with a singular line. Unclick preview if you want to go back into edit mode. What if I want to change the position of where this box is located? I take my mouse and I hover over the top center of the item. When you hover over the top center, your mouse becomes a four-way cross. So right there, I can left click and hold, and I can move it wherever it is that I want. So maybe I want to take out this section of work instead. Again, my mouse, top center of the item I want to move, four-way cross, click and hold, and distribute it wherever it is that I want it distributed. If I want to make it bigger or smaller, I take my mouse and go to the bottom right-hand corner. You'll notice the bottom right-hand corner becomes a four-way cross. I'm sorry, two-way cross, I beg your pardon. On the two-way cross, I can make it as big or as small as I want, and I can stretch it out as I see appropriately fit. So you've got a lot of latitude, either using the top center of the item to use the four-way cross, or the far left-hand side of the item, and you can make it as long or as short as you want, based upon whatever your needs may be. Any questions about editing a document by either using the add feature or the right-click add feature here? Either one readily available to you. Any questions, James, about that, or anything else you'd like me to continue and explain?
Yeah, real quickly, if you put a document in there, let's say somebody goes out to Dotloop and they bring a document in, and it does not have a signature field, you have to go in and add a signature box, if you will. And if you go back to, if you want to go back to the Documents tab real quick, well, there you go. You can do that. When you add that box, then you've got to assign that box to the respective person that you want to assign that box. So up at the top, you got the add box, and then next to you got your assign box, so that you can tell the system when you send out the email who's going to sign it. And if you don't do that, it's not going to allow you to email that document out there for an e-signature. And we'll show that to you in just a little bit when we get into sending something out for e-signatures.
When you want something signed or dated, you have to tell the software who it is that's going to be signing or dating that item. Okay. Oh, whoops, this is not for the buyer to sign. I wanted the seller to sign there. So I just click on it and assign it to the seller. Now the seller's name appears there. And this is not the buyer's signature date. This is click. This is, in fact, the seller's signature date. Very, very simple to do. Okay. You have a choice when you're adding elements. You can add in a signature date only or a date and time. Some people, for compliance purposes, want the time there, so you know exactly what time it was signed. Other people only want the date there. That's up to you. You've got that option available to you. Okay. Make sure you save your work. Very important. You don't want to lose anything you're working on. Okay, so now we're back in the Documents tab. You can see which documents are out for signature and which documents are in fact signed or in edit mode at this time. Let's go ahead and let's send something out for signature from this page, okay? When you're in the Documents tab, or quite frankly, if you're really in any of the tabs within Untitled Brokerage, if you know you have documents to send out for signature, you just go to the Actions tab and you click Request Signatures. It's absolutely that simple. I'll do that again for you in case I was going too quick. From the tabs, doesn't matter where you are, it's irrelevant. You simply go to the top of the page, Actions, Request Signatures. When you do that, it opens up a signing option on the menu. Let me take my sweatshirt off real quick. You can choose who in your transaction is authorized to sign. Is it the buyer, seller, broker, agent, appraiser, home inspector, title company? I'll show you where you can enter those people in with their email addresses. But in this particular instance, I want John Johnson to sign this. Okay. Do I want to deliver this to him by email or by text message? Or do I want to sign on this device? Okay. Let's explain sign on this device. You're sitting with John Johnson at Starbucks having Frappuccinos, and you've got paperwork for him to sign, and he doesn't have his iPhone, or his battery's dead, or you have Verizon and he has Sprint and he has a bad signal. For whatever reason, he's not able to get access to email wherever you are, or his phone's dead. Okay, if you click sign on this device, you're actually going to be handing your laptop or your tablet or your iPhone over to John Johnson. Sign on this device means whatever piece of equipment you're using to create the signature request, that same piece of equipment is going to be used to transmit the documents to your customer. Okay. The next option is require wet ink signature. Boy, this is important. As a fellow broker like James, I do not personally feel all that warm and fuzzy about customers signing their name by typing on a keyboard. I just think it breeds complacency, and it's too tempting to forge people's signature when you're typing on a keyboard. Is it legal? Yes. Can it be litigated and won? Yes. But I just don't feel warm and fuzzy about it. The same way I don't feel warm and fuzzy about my 16-year-old taking out the car at 10 o'clock at night. Just doesn't seem right. There's just too many things that can happen. Okay? So you have a choice. Require wet ink signature forces the e-signing customer to have to use a stylus or their finger to manually sign the document on a touchpad. They can't type their name on a keyboard. If you leave this unchecked, then the customer can go ahead and type their name on a keyboard. Again, it is legal, it is enforceable, it is binding. It just doesn't always feel right. And sometimes they'll make accusations about forgeries or fraudulent signatures. So I prefer checking this box here so that I'm forcing them to use their finger or a stylus to sign the documents. That is your call. I'll tell you this though, James, if you are going to have the customer sign on your device, meaning you're handing them your iPhone, there is no way I am letting them type their name on my iPhone, because when we capture that IP address, when we capture that geographical location, it's going to appear like you forged their name because it's on your iPhone that you're typing on a keyboard. I would make them use their fingertip or make them use a stylus so that you can hold them accountable. Okay, any questions on that point?
No, that's really good.
Okay. Documents to sign. Do you want to send them every available document? Do you want to send them only this document and this document? Do you want this document to go out first and this document to go out second? Do you want to remove this document? Totally up to you how you want to shift around these documents, if at all. You can send them everything, or you can send them only the things that you want them to sign. That is up to you. Again, transmit by email or text. Other documents you can look at in the file are here, but these do not require a signature. Okay. Now I am going to push sign on this device, because if I send this by email or if I send this by text, that's going to close our signing session, because you're not going to see John Johnson's email address when I send this out. So just for training purposes, I am purposely going to pick sign on this device. That means I'm theoretically sitting on a 4-inch iPhone screen that looks something like this, because you can do all of this on your iPhone or Android. And as I open that window up, I can push sign on this device, and it's now going to compress these two forms. It's going to splice them together into one PDF, and it's now going to be available for signing purposes, even if I'm doing this on a 4-inch cell phone screen. Now, do you want to download these PDFs? You can, but it's probably not what you're looking to achieve right now. I believe what you're looking to achieve is to apply the signature. So you're going to click review and sign documents. When you do so, this takes all of the Georgia documents that have been assembled and puts them into an e-signing queue so you can easily sign them. Now, as you know, I picked 2 different documents. This customer can go through both documents and can sign each page one at a time. And some people prefer signing each page one at a time. Other people love the feature that says sign all documents. When you push sign all documents, that takes those signature stamps that you saw and links them all together into one signature touchpad. So I can go ahead and I can use my finger to sign this name manually, and I can push save. And when I do so, it's going to apply my signature to all the disclosures and all the forms that came in the document package. Far better, more efficient, and really a lot faster than having them individually signed. But they can be either way, whatever you prefer. Any questions?
Looks good.
Okay, perfect. We're now going to return back into the transaction. we now can see the documents have been partially signed. Why haven't they been completely signed? You still have other customers that have to sign the documents in the transaction, but we got these partially signed at this time. Now we move on to the People tab. The People tab is going to give me a list of all the people involved in this transaction. James Hamby is the buyer's agent. The seller's agent representing the listing is Mark Spain of Mark Spain Realty. Now, if you want to link in other SCR agents, perhaps Mike speaks Spanish, but Martin does not. And Martin says, you know, Mike, these customers are Latin, and I'm really having a tough time communicating with them. I'd like to cut you in on a 25% referral fee on this deal if you'll partner up to me. And Mike says, great, I speak Spanish, 25% sounds good. I'll be happy to be included to help with some of the communications. You can use the additional agents feature. The additional agents feature allows you to choose other SCR agents that work well within your company. Is this Mike Bush or Mike Gray?
I think it's Mike Bush.
Okay, so we're going to add Mike Bush into this transaction and push save. And now the software is going to send either an email or a text message over to Mike Bush saying you've just been linked by James Hamby into the James Hamby transaction. Here is a direct hyperlink that takes you into this transaction. So additional agents are people who work at SCR that you want them to have full access to the transaction. They can see everything. The only thing that's confidential is your commission split. So be careful what you're looking for, right? It's very important. People use their best friend to handle their appraisal, right? And they don't want their friends knowing that they get free appraisals. Well, don't copy in one of your fellow SCR agents because they're going to see that there's a receipt with $0 charged from that appraisal that you're best friends with. Everything is displayed other than commission sharing between James and the agents and each other. James, any questions about that?
Yeah, Ben, if I'm representing myself as a buyer, but also as a customer, obviously, but if I'm representing myself as the seller, can I be in both of those sections? Can I be the buyer's agent and the seller's agent? Obviously, I'd be the seller's agent for the client for the listing and representing myself as a customer for the buyer.
The answer is yes. You can, but I always recommend that if you're going to be on both sides of the deal, it is my preference that you do two separate transactions, especially if you're going to be linking in a fellow agent from your office. The reason I like two separate transactions is reporting purposes. If you are on both sides of the deal and you co-merge everything into one file, which might be okay for you, James, and compliance purposes, when we run a report to see how many closings the person had this month, it's going to show one closing. Now, I don't know about you, but I count that as two closings because they had one buyer and one seller, and they got 6% commission, not 3%. And if you have it all loaded in as one transaction, it's only going to count that as one deal. Now, some people don't give a darn about metrics. I care deeply about metrics, so I'd like to have that as two separate transactions. And it's real easy to send over the compliance docs from one file to the other, or it's real easy to indicate to your compliance staff, hey, check this file for both buyer and seller, all the docs are there. But I'd want to register two separate transactions, especially for reporting purposes. Does that answer your question?
Very good.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, very good. So James is in your company, Mark is in a different company, and Mike is one of your fellow SCR agents that now has full access to the file. Okay. Down here, you've got pre-populated vendors. It's always going to populate with James Hanby as the broker of the office. It's always going to populate as Sandy Fulton as the transaction coordinator. If you have a favorite appraiser, if you have a favorite title company, if you have a favorite mortgage company, those two can be pre-populated, or you can manually add them. I want to add in a title company, and I can choose from a list of available title companies. I don't know if we have any loaded in there yet. I'm going to create one for you. Johnson and Johnson.
We use closing attorneys. Yeah.
I'm sorry? Beg your pardon?
We use closing attorneys. We don't use title companies. That's why you
Okay, so let's add an attorney here.
Closing attorney, you probably.
How about Bill Steinberg? He's going to be the lawyer on this deal. So now Bill Steinberg is now listed in there. And up here, we're going to change this because we don't have a first attorney. We're going to change this vendor, and we're going to make this the appraisal company. Can I change it here? Or just, no, I'll add a second attorney in here. We'll add in another vendor down here. We'll add in the appraisal company. And if we have any appraisers loaded, no. New appraisal corp. I'm
You
going to
could add in a home inspector.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You can add in a home inspector. You can add in a home warranty company, a lender. You can add in whatever you want to add in to whatever the agent wishes to put in their system. Because when it saves it in the vendor, it's there forever and ever for you.
Yeah, so that's why it pays to enter in their contact information, because you'll never have to enter it again, and you can always deploy them. Now, why is this helpful? Well, number one, it's helpful because when you're riding around in your car and you have to call somebody from your cell phone, you have one single page in Total Brokerage that shows you every single human being that is involved in your file. Appraiser, title company, surveyor, home inspector, mold remediator, landscaper, swimming pool contractor, buyer, seller, landlord, tenant, everybody's listed. What a convenient way to manage all the contacts in one place. The second way it is helpful for you is if you do open houses and you like to get somebody to pay for your brownies or somebody to pay for your cookies or somebody to pay for your signs, you can run a report in Total Brokerage to see exactly how many times you used Leslie Lemke or exactly how many times you used Billy Steinberg. Hey, Billy, this is Martin Wise calling. Hey, Martin, how you doing? Hey, Billy, listen, I'm having an open house next Sunday on this beautiful property, and I'd love you to sponsor it. Well, you know, Martin, let me tell you, I can't really do that because if I do it for you, I got to do it for Mike and for Julie and for Amy and everybody else. Hey, Billy, let's just be clear here. I'm a businessman. You're a businessman. Do you know that I've used you 16 times this year? Do you like the fact that I've used you 16 times? It would be awfully helpful, Billy, if you'd step up and sponsor my open house, because if you'd like to see me continue using you 16 more times, I think you're going to go to the local IGA or Walmart, pick up some brownies and cookies, put on your Sunday best, and show up to my open house. How does that sound, buddy? Good idea? I think I'll see you there around 10:30 on Sunday morning. I'm counting on you to be there. Hey, we're all entrepreneurs here. I'll be damned if I have to pay for cookies and brownies and balloons in an open house if I used you 10 times. Get your secretary to show up. I don't care who's there, but it's not going to be me getting brownies and cookies. I can tell you that much. And you can use that leverage as an independent contractor to try to siphon out some sponsorship money for your postcards, for your yard signs, for your open houses, because you're able to track how much business you give. The same way every little kid knocks on your door selling Girl Scout cookies, and every little kid knocks on your door at Christmas time trying to sell Christmas cookies for their school fundraiser, and you want to be a good member of the community, so you buy some cookies. I want you to sponsor my open house. I want you to sponsor my postcards. I want you to sponsor my radio advertising, whatever it is. Be a business person, more money in your pocket. Who likes the sound of that? I'm looking for a silent applause here. I am stopping the screen share right now, and until I see a wild, silent round of applause, we are not moving on. So let me see it. James, your agents are not clapping. They all want to pay for their own cookies and brownies. Okay, raise your hand if you want to go to Walmart and buy all your own cookies and brownies, and you want to unload your Visa and MasterCard into buying food for your open house. Nobody wants to do that. We want to get people to sponsor our business, right? So that's a good way to do it. Assuming, of course, you're tracking your business and you're monetizing it by seeing how much referrals you're giving to the landscaper, the pool guy, the home inspector, the mold remediator, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I keep track of everything, right? Okay, back to screen share now that I've gotten that off my chest. Any comments on that, James? Any thoughts?
Nope, you're good. You're good.
Okay, all right. Oh my gosh, James has a wife. I totally forgot about her because I've been dealing with him the whole time. She's got to sign this contract as well. We better add the wife in there. Add another buyer. And is that Karen? Is that right, James?
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
So now we've added Mrs. Hamby into this transaction. I can delete this one. Let me move her up. Move this one and let's add her here instead. There we go. So now we have buyer 1 and buyer 2. Now they're both set up for e-signing of documents. I don't know if John Johnson is married or not, so I'm not going to worry about that. If John's married, we'll add the wife later. If he's not, we're not going to worry about it. Okay. This is one of those cool auto save pages. So you don't have to click save here because it's auto saving everything you're doing. Okay. Property tab. So there are certain MLSs in Georgia, some of which are connected to Total Brokerage, some of which are not connected to Total Brokerage. If your local MLS is connected to Total Brokerage, you can type the MLS number right in here, push fetch, and the software is going to auto-populate whatever records are found in the MLS. If you enter an MLS number and you know the number is in fact accurate and it says nothing is found, then you know you're trying to pull from an MLS that is not connected to Total Brokerage. So if you've got some obscure membership in Northwestern Georgia that no one's a member of, it may say property not found. That's because Total Brokerage has not activated that MLS within our software. James? Is there a comment?
Yes, on that, we just yesterday, can you hear me okay? We just yesterday included FMLS. We're working on the paperwork for Classic MLS. The two in Macon and Warner Robins is coming, and the one in Valdosta and Tifton. So we are working on able to get all the MLSs. So if a Valdosta agent puts in their MLS number from their South Georgia MLS, it's going to fetch that information too. So we are working on that, and I'm hoping that before the end of the month, I have all our MLSs in this area so they can fetch that information, if you will, from their respective MLS.
Now, please don't get bent out of shape if you try to fetch by dropping an MLS number and it fails. It's a nice luxury feature, but it's kind of like extra salad dressing. The salad tastes perfectly good with just regular dressing. Extra dressing is a little sweeter, right? You can manually type in all these fields and you can enter that information in. It's not going to radically change your life having to enter this information in. It's just a little bit of a convenience factor. So don't get frustrated if it's not fetching. You go, of course, can alert our customer service department and we'll make sure that your account's properly configured. But if your account is configured and the fetching has failed, that means the account is not set up to fetch from your MLS. So I just want you to know it's a piece of cake to type in these fields and enter that information. Now, if you've been successful at entering an MLS number and fetching information, and if you have in fact saved your work, there is one cool feature that's available to you if you fetch from the MLS. You have the ability in Total Brokerage to create an optional PDF from the MLS. The first step is entering the MLS number. Second step is pushing fetch. The third step is pushing save. And the fourth and final step is going to actions, create PDF from MLS right there. When you push create PDF from MLS, the software goes into your MLS and it creates this PDF. It takes about 15 to 30 seconds, and then it becomes available in the Documents tab when it has been completed. Okay, thank you for the notification. Let's go back to the Documents tab and see what this is done by pushing actions, create PDF from MLS. The top line says MLS report. What is the MLS report that was just populated at 11:28 in the morning today? The MLS report, I'm going to blow up the screen a little bigger, is a printout from your local Georgia MLS for this property with this MLS number that shows you all of the public remarks that were extracted from this particular MLS listing. For example, if they tell you that this home is made of aluminum and vinyl and you have it on an MLS report, you and I both know that there's a disclosure on every page of the MLS, and it says on the MLS, we believe the information found in the MLS is accurate. However, we have absolutely no responsibility for all the mistakes and errors found in the MLS. So what if this house is made of concrete? Now, if it's advertised incorrectly in the MLS, you have no traction because it says on the MLS, we think the information is correct, but we're not responsible for the mistakes. That's your problem. So if the house is actually concrete, you have no claim. But if you retrieve the material from the MLS and you create this optional addendum that is already set up for e-signature, you can actually attach this as an addendum to your purchase contract, signed and initialed by buyer and seller. Why might that be helpful? Because once it's part of your purchase contract, if this information is wrong, now you have something to sink your teeth into. Mr. Seller, I understand the property was poorly advertised on the MLS. Mistakes happen. But Mr. Seller, when I generate an addendum from the MLS that says aluminum vinyl, darn it, I expect a home with aluminum and vinyl. I do not expect a concrete house. I produced this and made it part of my contract. You signed and initialed it with my customer. Now we have something to sink into our teeth. Are you going to give me a $2,000, a $12,000, a $22,000, or a $200,000 credit at closing for my inconvenience? Because now I'm going to negotiate. Now, that's construction material, right? There's lots of things to consider here. What if this particular property does not have cable TV hooked up to it? What if this property has bunny ears? Do you think your buyer is going to be a little ticked off to find out that they have to pay the cable company to run 3 miles of cable at a cost of $10,000 a mile to their house? It's going to cost them $30,000 after closing to connect cable TV. Do you think your buyer is going to be a little ticked off? I would think so. I don't want bunny rabbit ears on my TV. So that's why it's helpful to use this addendum as part of your contract. Do you have to have an airbag and a seatbelt? No. The law says you have to have a seatbelt. An airbag is an extra layer of protection. Is it smart to have an airbag? Absolutely. Do you have to have one? No. Is it a good idea? Yes. This is the airbag. It's a great idea to have it. It's not going to stop you from driving your car or running your transaction without it. But I love this addendum because it allows me to not only rely on what I see on the MLS, but allows me to get my customers to sign off on all the material found in the property. If I'm expecting gas and I find out post-closing this property only has electric, we are going to war. We are going to war. You told me this property had gas and now it's only electric, there's no gas available. What else is on this optional 13-page addendum if I choose to use it? Well, we made it pretty for you. Not only do we give you all the written text out of the MLS, we give you every single photo found. Whoa, 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 whoa. When I saw this property, there was a stainless steel dishwasher and a stainless steel stove. How come when I got to closing, there was no dishwasher and there was a hot pink with purple polka dot stove? Who swapped out my appliances? I documented the appliances by downloading them. Whoa, 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 whoa. This floor, when I saw it, had no scratches. And apparently when you moved out, you jacked up the floor by sliding your dining room table across it. And now there are these big gouges in the floor. Who's going to pay for that? This is pre-closing. This is walkthrough day, baby. So you can understand why having all these photos might possibly be helpful to document what the person is or isn't getting in the property. Do you need the airbag? No. Do you need the anti-lock brakes? No. Do you need the crumple zones on the engine? No. All those things are very helpful for safety reasons. The only thing you have to have is the seatbelt, but these are just extra layers of protection. Any questions about that? Any questions?
I think it's a great benefit.
Cool. I find it helpful.
We're good. It's a great benefit.
And notice every page is already set up in the format to be initialed and signed at the bottom. So you now get to sink your teeth into something if there's any kind of a disagreement on the property. And we just talked about flooring and appliances. What about a home that's partially furnished? Hey, where is that couch that was supposed to be included? Where are those window treatments? And where is that dining table that was supposed to be included? So that can be very helpful for you. Any other comments or questions on that particular issue pertaining to document stream or the property tab? Beg your pardon.
No, I think that's a good one. I like it.
Cool.
Property tab, all the MLSs should be in there hopefully within the next couple of weeks. So
awesome.
Stay tuned and be patient.
I see 27 notes in the chat log. You have that under control for me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
The financial tab. If you want your CDAs completed, if you want your commissions calculated, if you want your purchase contracts and listing agreements all filled in, you are going to have to bite your teeth right into this financial tab and start filling in the numbers. Everything you leave blank is going to cause documents to be blank. If you don't tell us what the sale price is, if you don't tell us what the transaction fee is, if you don't tell us what your commission split is, no wonder all the math is not being auto-generated. You need to feed the engine. The engine are these tabs. When you feed the engine, all the documents will be auto-populated. So it's very important you go through these different fields and you enter them in accordingly. Now, what's beautiful about total brokerage is you have the ability to enter these fields either under the tabs or you can type them right on the documents. Check it out. This property is being sold for $185,000. Whoops, I made a mistake. It's supposed to be $200,000. So I can change that right here. If I go back to the Documents tab, I don't know, did I say that, Matt? Financial saves automatically. Okay, auto saves. Perfect. Go back to the I do. I'm sorry. Financial tab. Beg your pardon. I have to save this page. It's not something I'm saving yet. $200,000, and I'm going to save that change. We'll get that fixed for you soon. If I go to the Documents tab, now James, help me out here. Is that going to show on the purchase contract? I assume yes, because I'm not familiar with all your Georgia documents.
That is correct. Yeah.
Perfect. If I bring up
right
my
there.
purchase contract and I push the eyeball, because remember, you use your eyeballs to see things. I push the eyeball. I can see somewhere on this page, James is going to help me out, where it shows me the purchase price.
Yep.
Page 2, right here, number 2.
There
There you go. Purchase property price $200,000. It's filled in. If you don't push the eyeball, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to show you all these empty boxes to show you where the map fields are open and available for editing. If you push your eyeball to see the completed document, you'll see that the property address and the county and the state and the MLS number and the customer's names, the purchase price are all filled in. Oh, wait a second. This property isn't $200,000. It's $250,000. So I can click my mouse right in here and change the price to $250,000, and I can save my work. And not only is it going to show me the new price of $250,000, and I'm going to save my work because I always have a habit of saving. If I go back into that transaction and I go back into the Financial tab, I will see it's been updated to $250,000. So all of the documents are tied in to the tabs, and all the tabs are tied into the documents. So you can enter where you feel comfortable. You can enter the documents themselves, or you can enter on the tabs. That is your choice. Everything is auto-populated. And guess what? Your commission just went up by the $65,000 price increase because all the math is done for you based on the new $250 price versus the prior $185 price when we started this out. Any comments on that, James?
Yes, sir. This page is twofold. It's not just taking the information of the sales price, the seller's closing costs, the earnest money put in the contract. This particular tab also is what generates back to our DAs, which stands for disbursement authorization, so the agent can get paid at the table. So it's very, very important that when an agent, instead of trying to download another DA, fill it out, upload it, if you'll just make sure that you put the DA in from the forms into the Documents tab, fill this out, it will automatically populate onto that DA. And so if you would, Ben, go to the Documents tab real quick.
And by the way, I referred to it as CDA because in Florida, we call it a commission disbursement authorization. So it's the same thing.
Okay. Go to the Documents tab real quick for me.
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Yep. And SCR DA, right there, click on that.
You use the eyeball to see everything. And now it's all
and if you
filled out
notice
for
when you
you.
turn,
All populated, all filled
so
out.
right there alone, if you need to add anything, you can click on a box and add it. If you, let's say, for example, James D. Hamby right now is really James D. Hamby LLC. You can click on James D. Hamby about the middle way down, Ben, middle ways down the document.
You're on there twice.
And you can unassign James D. Hamby and put James Hamby LLC there. And that way, if you want your commissions on number 2 right there, right below, you can fix that yourself. Now, I know with the new onboarding system that's coming out in Total Brokerage in the next couple of days, you'll be able to fix that probably in your profile. But for right now, in the event that it shows your name and you want your check to be made out to your LLC, you just got to simply make that change. And don't forget to save it. Now, when you're done at this point, hit Actions. When you hit Actions, you're going to hit Request Signature, and you're going to send this document to Sandy to sign. And when Sandy gets this document, she's going to sign it. The neat thing is that you both are going to get emails back and forth when this takes place. So you click on the SCR DA down there. Dear Sandy, you're the wonderfulest person in the whole wide world. Thanks for the closing table, yada, yada, yada. Click the SCR Commission 1 DA at the bottom, and at the bottom right-hand corner, you hit send. That's going to go into Sandy's email. She can pull it up, sign it for you, and get it right back to you. And it will come right back into that Documents tab, sign. Alrighty. And right now there's a couple extras in there because I wanted to bring out a couple points. If you upload a DA without going through this process and you filled it out and you do not assign a signature for her to sign, that document will not be emailed to her. It can't. The system has to recognize that there has to be a signed signature to it.
So let me give you a perfect example of that so we're all clear, because I find people learn best by examples. This MLS report is only set up in this particular example for buyer and seller to sign. It is not set up for Sandy to sign, okay? So watch what happens if I try to send this to Sandy. If I go back into the file here and I go to Actions, Request Signatures, and I try to send this to Sandy as opposed to the buyer or the seller, it does not show me the MLS report as an available document to her, because her signature stamp does not appear anywhere on that MLS report. So I can't send it to her. Why is the document missing? I'm getting frustrated. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I want Sandy to sign my document. Why isn't it coming up? Is the document missing? It's missing because it's either already been signed or it's never been requested for her to sign. So how would I fix that problem? If I go back into the transaction and I open up that document and I open up that MLS report that I want Sandy to sign for whatever reason, again, this is just an example, I have to give her a space to sign. She is not the buyer. She's not the seller. I want her to sign her name right over here. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to add a signature box. I'm going to take the 4-way mouse, which is on the top center of the item, and I'm going to drag it right here where I want it to be. I'm going to take the mouse, bottom right corner, and I'm going to make this as big or as small as I want. Again, top center of the item allows you to relocate it. Bottom right of the item changes the size of the item. I want Sandy's date to appear right here. And I want to move it right there. And I want to make it bigger right there. But I have to assign these to Sandy. So I click it. I click Assign. I'm going to assign it to the transaction coordinator. I'm going to click it. I'm going to assign it to the transaction coordinator. I'm going to save my work. Okay. Now, when I try to Actions, Request Signature, and I try to send something to Sandy, who's my transaction coordinator, guess what optional document is now available for me to send to her? The document where I've deployed the transaction coordinator's signature request. So hopefully that's clear to everybody. Okay. James, any comments on that?
Nope, we're good.
Okay, cool. So we are just cruising along over here. So we've gone through all these tabs through financial. The last thing on financial I want to show you, who loves paying taxes on April 15th? Please raise your hand high if you love paying lots of taxes on April 15th. I know I don't. My hand's down. I don't see any of your hands up. How do we find more tax deductions? Well, if my name is Mike Bush, The way I find tax deductions is I upload all of my expenses tied into this transaction. So the first thing that I have to do is add in the cost of my super lockbox. My super lockbox cost me $108.65. I'm going to add that in there. The next thing that I'm going to add in is my 2 newspaper ads. I'm going to add that in. Those 2 ads cost me $428.12. And the last thing is open house cookie tray. I should have found a sponsor for this one. And I spent $79.14 on my cookie tray. If I save my work, the system is going to generate a report for me at closing that shows I've got $615 in tax deductions against my earnings on this transaction. So when I do my quarterly filings, or when I meet with my bookkeeper, my account at the end of the year, it's going to be able to match up my expenses with this transaction. I understand that the property was $100,000. I understand there was a 3% commission of $3,000. I understand you got a 75% split on the $3,000, so you made $2,250. I understand that James gave you an IRS 1099 at the end of the year for $2,250, but you didn't really make $2,250. You made $2,250 minus $615. You really only made $1,600 on this deal. So why are you paying taxes on $2,250 when you should be paying taxes on $1,600? Where do you put the receipts for your Supra, your newspaper, and your cookie tray? Right here under the Documents tab. You are going to upload those as PDFs, or you are going to email those receipts into this transaction so all the documents are properly organized. Quite frankly, does James, your broker, care how many tax deductions you have? I'm sure he loves you. I'm sure on some level he cares. But deep down, is his life impacted by all of your expenses, Mike Bush's expenses? No, James doesn't care. That's not his job to care. That's your job. So if you want to find another powerful reason to use total brokerage, it's going to give you a really wonderful way to organize your tax deductions, as opposed to that ridiculous Nike Air shoebox you've been using for the past 10 years. Any questions on that from anybody? Okay, base commission. Base commission is going to auto-populate all your earnings on this transaction. All you have to do is enter in the gross commission check. So you know on this particular deal, you brought in $6,547.29. And when you enter that in, all of the math is done for you. It calculates out your deduction for your service fees, your transaction fees, and it shows you how the split is all calculated, shows you what you get, and it shows you what the company gets. All the math is done for you. Just make sure you save your work. Very, very, very simply. You can express this as dollars or a percentage of the sale price. More often than not, you're going to express it as dollars because you might have a junk fee or a transaction fee charged to the customer. So it's very hard if you're only getting a 3% commission. That's pretty simple. You can do that, but many of you are getting more than a 3% commission.
Ben, this tab is super, super important. This is our reporting tab that will generate our 1099s at the end of the year to go to our CPA. It's a must. The financial tab and the base commission tab is a must to fill out. It's a must. And it also keeps up with their own reporting throughout the month, quarter, year, so they can determine under reports. Over to the left, they can click on reports and they can see exactly how much business they've done throughout the year. So we really, really need these tabs to be filled in. It's going to help you, the agent. It's going to help us in the compliance section.
On this entire page for base commission, the only thing you have to fill in is the dollar amount of the gross check that was brought into Southern Classic. That's it. Everything else is done for you. All the math is done. All you have to do is plug in this number. This is the title company's gross payment on the HUD statement to SCR. It's your commission, plus any bonuses, plus any transaction fees or anything else you're charging your customer. Plug in that one number, all the math is done.
I am going to interject there just real quick. If you get 100% commission, yes. If you have to pay an FMLS fee or a transaction fee, you right there are going to have to click on add a line item, click deduction, put something else in there, whether it's a home warranty, a referral fee, things of that nature, so that you can put that in there so it can calculate what you're doing. As far as you got your gross commission income less your expenses, that's your net income. So make sure that you're paying attention to what you're doing when you're putting in this. You know,
here's another cool feature. Remember we asked Mike Bush to help us because he speaks Spanish, right?
yes.
Is it fair that I get 100% of the money and Mike Bush is just doing this to help me on a handshake? Probably not. I offered him a 25% referral fee to help me out. So if I want to link in Mike Bush here, I can come right over here to edit transaction splits, and I can take my share of this deal down to 75%. I can give my partner Mike the 25 that we agreed on. These two numbers, of course, have to equal 100. When I push save, it backs out 25% of the gross off the top over here, and all the math is adjusted accordingly. Now, if Mike and I are on different commission structures, obviously Mike's business is not my business, and my business is not Mike Bush's business. So Mike cannot see what my commission structure is down here. And conversely, I cannot see what Mike's commission structure is. You'll notice every time I touch Mike's name, it turns red. Red means you can't click on it. Even when you try to click on it, it won't take you to Mike's disbursement page. So what it does is it takes the top line math that's coming off the top of the deal, and it shares that mutually with both Mike and you, because you're partnering up. But down here, when it comes down to the more sensitive private stuff about your deductions, your splits, what have you, you can only see your deal and Mike can only see his deal. Everything below the blue bar is confidential. We call this the blue bar of confidentiality. Any questions on that, James?
We, as the staff, Sandy, who's my controller, can see that. Each agent cannot see each other's side, but it's really, again, this is so crucial that we make sure that we get this tab correct, because it's going to affect your 1099. So Sandy is very well of this. She's got an accounting background, has been an auditor, has worked for the IRS. She knows her stuff when it comes to accounting. But if you don't put this in correctly, it's not going to generate the 1099 at the end of the year.
Perfect.
Am I unmuted?
You are now.
This is Sandy. This is the page where you would put your referral fee if you're paying OpCity or Zillow or all of those places. And that top line commission income has to match the HUD. When I go to close out a transaction, we have to be able to account to GREC for every penny that the HUD says we got paid. So this page is critical.
That's right. Critical.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sandy.
Don't forget, on this particular page at the bottom right-hand corner, hit that save button, because if you don't, all that work you did, and Ben and Michael and Matt are working hard to try to make all our tabs save automatically. But for right now, make sure you hit that save button, please.
Perfect.
James, is this also where the rebate from America's Preferred Home Warranty comes in? Do you put that on here?
I'm going to take that one, and that answer is no. The American Preferred Home Warranty, sorry, it's Sandy. I will create a separate transaction to pay you and to account for that. Because we need to keep this pure for GREC purposes and only have it relate to the HUD, the American Preferred Home Warranty will be a separate transaction. And I will create that on your behalf and put in the activity tab, which we'll get to in a few minutes, notes telling you what check number and what date I mailed it to you. And you will get a notification that you have a new transaction and that you were paid on it. Great question.
Thank you. Okay, bonus commission. I don't think we have to worry too much here, James, right? Because it's the same split arrangement, whether it's the regular commission or bonus, or is there different split structures?
No, it's still pretty much the same. I mean, bonuses are really only paid like construction. I don't really foresee us using that tab very much. They can keep everything under the base commission and move forward.
Okay, yeah, bonus commission only comes into play.
Because it's total gross commission income.
Right. The only time commission bonus comes in is if
Did you
there's a
hear me?
different split for the agent on bonuses versus regular commissions. Okay, earnest money.
That's right.
Just as you would expect, this is where you're going to enter in any type of earnest money on the transaction. Who is holding your escrow deposit? Where is it being held? What amount? Quite obvious what you're going to do here. If you're working with 4 or 5 buyers at the same time, you got 4 or 5 pendings, it's confusing all the different attorneys that you're working with if they're all picking with different lawyers. So you're going to enter that information in, which is quite simple. Calendar. This is what's going to populate all the dates in your contracts. First deposit, second deposit, closing date, mortgage contingency date, home inspection deadline, title company deadlines, listing expiration deadline. Any deadlines that you have in your transaction get entered here. Now, as I showed you during prior trainings, your total brokerage calendar should be set to sync with your iPhone or your Android or your Microsoft Outlook calendar or your Yahoo calendar, because we sync with all 4 of those and they're all available to you. This is real important to stay organized. When you enter the dates here, these dates accomplish 2 things. Number 1, they all populate on your dashboard on the total brokerage calendar, which is set to sync with your iPhone, Android, Outlook, and Yahoo calendar. But number 2, all these dates auto-populate on your documents. The same way we saw we raised the price from 185,000 to 200, then to 250. We saw how the tabs feed the documents. Guess what? The tabs feed the documents. So all of your deadlines and your transactions are fed from here. You can either type those dates on your documents and that will backfill the tabs, or conversely, just the same, you can type on the tabs and those will autofill your documents. But the dates are important, otherwise your documents will be incomplete.
Ben, the
Sir.
most important date for reporting purposes is the closing date. We always have to have that closing date inputted in this tab.
And if you have to have a closing extension, because maybe the buyer's mortgage fell apart and he wants a 15-day extension, if you're drafting an addendum to the purchase contract to delay closing 15 days, you want to make sure you change the closing date here or on the typed total brokerage addendum, because that's going to change all your reporting. The closing is no longer February 20th. It's now a March closing. It's now closing on March 7th or March 8th. So it's very, very important you change the tabs accordingly, because it changes all the reports. It also changes all your documents. You have an addendum being drafted, moving the closing 15 days to March 8th. So you want to draft it accordingly. It then updates the total brokerage calendar, which then updates your iPhone, which then updates your Android, which then updates your Outlook, which then updates your Yahoo calendar. And the world goes round and round, all because you entered it in the right place.
If this is Sandy again, if you do not know when your closing date is, put your best guess in. If you do not put a closing date in, when you go to run a report or I go to run a report, the system doesn't know when it closed. So it will omit that transaction for you when you're trying to guess how much to pay for your taxes. And it will not allow me to go out and see which HUDs we still don't have. The system doesn't know when. The system pulls reports based on that closing date. If I say I want all closes between January 1st and February 31st, if that closing date is blank, the system thinks it doesn't exist in 2021. So all the other dates are there for your convenience. Closing date is there for yours and for mine. Thanks.
Correct.
So what she's telling you is accuracy is real important, but if there's a choice between nothing and being wrong is better than nothing. Accuracy is very, 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 very important, but if there's a choice between being being wrong and being empty, choose wrong. Okay.
Correct.
Email. James talked about this previously. When documents are emailed under the general tab using this transaction email address, they will appear here in the email tab, except when you're emailing documents to yourself. If Martin Wise sends a document to a file that is operated and controlled by Martin Wise, it's going to bypass the email tab, and the PDF associated with it, the appraisal, the home inspection, the mortgage contingency letter, will automatically be deposited right to the Documents tab. Why do we bypass the email tab? Because we know that Martin Wise is not crazy enough to infect his own transaction with a virus. We know that Martin Wise is not spamming himself. So we try to make it convenient that if Martin Wise sends documents of any type into a file controlled and operated by Martin Wise, those PDFs will automatically go into the Documents tab. However, if any other person on planet Earth sends a document into your transaction using the transaction email address, that document will be held temporarily in the email tab so that you have an opportunity to review it before you import it into your transaction, because we don't want you getting virused or spammed or what have you. Now, here's a little trick. Martin Wise has two email addresses. He has martinwise@gmail.com, and that's what's registered with Total Brokerage, and that's how he logs into Total Brokerage, and that's what he lives and breathes by in his career. If Martin Wise sends documents from martinwise@gmail.com into his transaction, it will immediately bypass the email tab, and the documents will go right to the Documents tab. However, Martin also is a part-time car washer, and he has an email address, martinwashescars@aol.com. If Martin tries sending documents from martinwashescars@aol.com, guess what? He's a stranger. The software doesn't recognize Martin Washes Cars at AOL.com. So if he sends from there, those documents will go into the email tab and he will be treated as a stranger. He will have to review those documents here to make sure they're not infected or they're incorrect or spam, and then he'll be able to import them into his Documents tab just the same. Any questions for Martin the car washer, Martin the realtor, or anybody else for that matter? James, we okay with that?
I'm good. That's pretty clear.
Perfect. Activity tab. I just got off the phone.
My favorite tab. This is my favorite tab. I love
I
this tab.
just got off the phone with, I spoke to Don, the appraiser, and he said, I'll have the appraisal no later than Friday. So I saved that note in my transaction. That always puts the newest note on the top of the list. So I can see on the top of the list, there's the note that I just registered at 12:01 p.m. How am I going to remember on Friday to make sure I have that appraisal? I'm going to add it to my calendar right here. I'm going to add this to my calendar. So on Friday, let's say around lunchtime, I'll schedule a 15-minute time block to check my records to see if in fact that appraisal has arrived. It will pop up in Total Brokerage, it will text me, it will email me all 15 minutes before noon on Friday with a link to this particular entry. Also, I just got a phone call here, an inbound call from James. This customer is awful. Screaming at me, saying dirty words. I am at a loss. Will you please call this nut job and talk him off the fence for me? I can flag James in this transaction right here by entering his name. When I enter this in, James is getting a text message or an email with this link right here that takes him right to the file. Maybe I want Sandy to take a look at something that I'm having a problem with. I can get rid of James and Mike, and I can put in Sandy Fulton. I can't find the check. It may have been mailed. Did you get it in the office this week? Coming from Smith Attorney in the amount of $4,678, whatever the number is. I can't even see because I've got my Zoom window too big. $4,678.34. If I send this off right now, Sandy Fulton just got an email. She's got a text message with this link right here. So it's a great way to internally communicate if you have to share something about the file. Just please make sure you understand the only people you can link into your transaction is someone who's either designated as a manager, which at your SCR company, there's about 5 managers. They can be linked in, or Mike Bush can be linked in because you added Mike as an active member of this transaction, okay? Nobody else. I can't link in Dot. I can't link in Martin Weiss. I can't link in Rebecca, even if I want to, because they're not part of this transaction. Only managers or other linked in agents can be connected to this transaction. But you know what? Mike just quit SCR. Mike no longer works at SCR. I got to get him out of this transaction. I go back to the People tab and I give Mike the boot by coming right over here and removing him. Sayonara, Mike. You are out of this deal. He no longer has access to this transaction. He's out. He's gone. He's removed. Any questions about the Activity tab from anybody?
Ben,
Sir?
if you see on my phone, I got the email just now that you sent out saying, James, this customer is awful, screaming at me. It came to me directly. This is live. And so this Activity tab is not only just important for you as an agent to put notes in where the transaction is concerned, it's the way that you can communicate with John, Sandy, or myself, and we can communicate back with you the same way. So this Activity tab, someone says, well, what happens? I sent the HUD, now what? You can simply go in the Activity and say, Sandy, I just sent you the HUD. Please review and close out the transaction. And that way you are being proactive in telling us what you just did. Sandy, I just emailed you the DA. Sandy can come back out and say, hey, Angie, just mailed you a check for $3,873. Check number 123 on this closing. Congrats. It's the way to communicate back and forth with each other from my staff to you, the agents, through this one Activity tab, strictly where this particular transaction is concerned.
One point in that regard, communication, yes. Annoy, no. So for example,
Yeah.
I showed the property today to a buyer that is interested in backup offer if this current deal falls through. Do I have to notify James of that? I don't think so. Don't waste his time. He doesn't care. Take him out of there. Make sure there's nobody being notified and then just save it. Still there, right? It's right there, but I didn't waste James's time. Here I notified Sandy. Here I notified Sandy. Here I deleted Mike Bush and kicked him out of the deal, but I did not notify anybody over here. So just keep that in mind, okay?
Very good point. Thank you.
Otherwise, James will be devastated how many notifications he gets if every time you type in the Activity tab, he gets an email, okay? Checklist. This is the big topic of the day. This is where we do our compliance, and this is where we stay on top of our files. So I am going to select the Southern Classic Buyer Checklist for this. And I'm going to push save. This is now creating a whole new process of steps for me to go through every single step of the way so I know where I should be. It's like baking a cake. The first step is go to the grocery store and buy your supplies. The second step is to take out the baking sheet. The third step is preheating the oven. The fourth step is to rinse out your mixing bowl. You got to stay in order. You can't go to the grocery store last. You're not going to have any ingredients. This is our transaction turtle. His name is Tommy. We call him Tommy the Transaction Turtle. When I teach this class in Los Angeles or Miami, his name is Transacción Tortuga Tomás. But we're not teaching in LA or Miami. We're teaching in Georgia. So we're just going to call him Tommy. Okay? Every time you satisfy one of the steps, Tommy moves a little bit closer to his one day eventual future closing. It shows you when and how you completed the step. Don't skip steps. Go in order. What happens if there's a document box that says add documents and you try to check it off because you're taking shortcuts? You must select at least one document to mark this as complete. Exclusive buyer brokerage engagement F11. So I'm going to click my mouse in here. This automatically links me to the document folder that has all my documents in it. Again, when I click my mouse in this box, it automatically links me to the document folder containing all the documents, so I can tell management that I in fact have the engagement letter. I don't know if there's a broker engagement letter or the F1.0, whatever it is he wants.
Anything.
He wants the F10 and he wants the F507 documents, okay? Now I can check off that I have uploaded these items. Guess who's moving and grooving? Tommy is moving and grooving step by step by step, closer to closing. Now, when these documents are when these check boxes are black and white, I can check and uncheck them all day long, and Tommy moves forward and backwards accordingly. Also, you'll notice the time and date stamp updates accordingly. Eventually, I'm going to be forced to send this out for review. Compliance is still not interested in seeing this file. It's still not far enough along. It's still not satisfactory to compliance. But eventually, there will be a time that I have to have compliance get involved over here. What's that? What is that?
Ben,
Yeah.
to
Sir,
the right, if, for example, you do not have a counter offer in there, you double click on that red circle right there, and it will fix it to where you go right past it. It marks this item as non-applicable.
thanks for teaching me that, James, because that's new to me. I never saw that before. Awesome. I'm gonna let you teach next time. You have been in this file a lot. I never even used that feature.
I do want to share one more thing before I forget it. If you're in a purchase and sales agreement and there is a small little box that you got to put an X on, double click that box and the X will show up. If you try to single click it, it will not show up in the documents. So you'll get done. So what I've done, Ben, just so everybody knows this, from the first time that Matt and I set these checklists up and designed them, over the matter of fact, this past weekend, I've gone in and revised them. So in the buyer's checklist, we're only really trying to have one compliance time. In the seller's checklist, there's going to be 2 times to be that. Prior, I had 3 or 4 in there, and that just gets too time consuming for John Johnson to be able to review that. So we get down to this point now that you're fixing to send the request review to John. This is when you click on that button. Thank you, Ben, for letting me do this. And it goes to John Johnson. It goes into a compliance queue. So if there's 10 people this morning that sent in a contract, it's going to go into a compliance queue, and John is going to get to it in order as they come into our system. He's either going to pass or fail you. If he passes you, it's going to release the rest of this checklist for you to move forward. If he fails you because you didn't do something right in the contract, he's going to give you an explanation what that is. You go back in there, fix it, resubmit it, John passes it, and then you continue moving on to the transaction to get to the closing table.
Is John on this call right now, James?
I believe he is.
Great, John, I'm about to send you this file. When it comes to you, just go ahead and approve it for me. So I'm gonna show them what happens. But I want to show you guys something first. You see this blue button, request review. Watch what happens if I unclick any button. Oh, whoops, I forgot to protect myself. I'm gonna unclick that button. Guess what? That blue button is no longer available to me. I can't send this to John until I have satisfied the mandatory steps in this transaction. The request review button should be here, but it's not here because I skipped a step because I was trying to do shortcuts. Oh, okay, now I'm protecting myself. So I'm going to check off this box again. Guess what appears down here? The request review button that I'm waiting for. Now, I shared with you that when these buttons are black and white, they can be checked and unchecked all day long. And Tommy, the turtle over here, he moves forward and backwards every time you check and uncheck a box. Watch what happens to all my black check marks on the left-hand side once I fire off a request. Watch what happens to this check mark. 1, 2, 3. It saves my work, and it's now locked all my check marks. They're no longer editable. John, my compliance officer, just got an email asking to review this file. Now down below, there's nowhere for me to go. I can't proceed. I am stuck. I am at John's mercy waiting for him to approve me, okay? He's either going to approve me or fail me. Once he passes me, another series of check marks will appear here so that Tommy the turtle can move on with his business, okay? John, did you get that email?
I did, and I just passed you.
Perfect.
Important thing to say right here is that you're viewing it as an agent. You will not see that green and red pass fail.
Correct. I saw that pass fail as a manager because I was signed in as a manager. Guess what just happened? John just passed me and woo, there's a whole bunch of new check marks for me to go through. Again, the ones that have already been approved, I can't go back and mess with these. They're locked, they're green, they're locked up, but all the other ones I can either check off or I can say it's not applicable. Please don't be lazy. If it is applicable, don't just check not applicable because you don't want to waste your time. It's very important to James and everyone in management to have organized files. So if something is applicable, make sure you do your job. If something's not applicable, obviously you can click the not applicable button on the right-hand side.
Go
Check
back
it.
up there. Go back up, Ben, to where it reads John passed it. Right there. John Johnson approved this item on 1/19 at 12:13 p.m. If it's failed, it will come back there and says, John Johnson failed your item, and give the explanation as to why it failed so that you can fix it. That's why John sent out a really nice video the other day of the 6 things that we fail to do sometime that we just, for whatever reason, miss it. So if you're being very specific on making sure you write good contracts, John's probably going to pass them much faster than us having to fail it and you send it back, and it becomes time consuming to do that. So please, please, please make sure you're doing a really good job on filling out good, solid contracts. Do not leave blanks blank, and do a good job. And John can input anything there he wants, but I think the video the other day that he sent out stands by itself.
Yeah, those are really the top 6 things that I see every single day that come through, and they're just small things. They're check boxes or things you might just skim through, usually at the top of the form. And if we could work on those 6 things alone, you'd be amazed how much faster I could zip through compliance than I do right now.
I will also point out that some of you, and Bridget, I see your hands up. Just one moment, please. Some of you are probably wondering, okay, John approved me, but how do I know that? Because I'm sitting in bed watching David Letterman. Anything that happens in your total brokerage file, if a document comes in, if an email comes in, if John approves you, if John fails you, if James responds to your activity tab where you said, James, this customer is terrible, please call him and straighten him out for me. If anything happens in your total brokerage file, you are going to receive an email and or a text message into your login email address, wherever you log in, that says, Dear Bridget, there's been an update to your file from John Johnson. Dear Bridget, James has responded to your inquiry. Dear Bridget, the appraiser just sent in the appraisal. Dear Bridget, the mortgage lender just sent in the pre-qualification certificate. So while we love you to be logged into Total Brokerage as much as you can, we are going to send notifications to your email inbox and to your text messaging to alert you to every single minuscule change in the file, to invite you back into the file to see what's modified or changed. Okay?
One more thing, Ben, please.
Yes.
Make sure that you're not duplicating stuff over and over and over again. It just slows the compliance down for John. So if you submit the purchase and sales agreement and you move down, don't upload the purchase and sales agreement again and again and again. Just put that in there the one time and he'll compliance that. If you have a document that's beyond this, and let's say, for example, you had an amendment that you had to get signed at the closing table. It's not in the checklist. What do? You upload that document into your documents tab, send an activity message to John, says, I got an amendment at the closing table that had to be signed and it's now included. Therefore, you can go check that out real quick. You've already closed, compliance is technically dead, but at least if you have something at the closing table that you had to input, you can at least let John know that he can take a look at that.
Yeah, let me just add to that if I can, James.
Sure.
When you go through the different tabs and you've got it on your screen, sometimes I see agents, they'll put, for instance, purchase and sale, one right after the other in all those different categories. And sometimes it's the same document, but often it's not. So even though it says purchase and sale 4 or 5 times, I still have to go through all those. Okay, so when you're labeling your forms to be compliant, be really accurate as to what it is. And that will also be a big help.
Yep. So if you go back, Ben, if you don't mind, run back to the Documents tab real quick for me, please, sir.
Yeah.
My Zoom window, because of course my Zoom window pops up wherever I want to be. It gets in my way. Okay, Documents tab.
So right there on the very first one, MLS report, click on the Operations tab. And you can rename that. So if you put a document in there and it says Form 1, whatever, make sure that we are being more explanatory of what that document is. We saw one the other day came in and said Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, Form 4. We don't know what that is. So if you're putting something in there, please, if it doesn't have a good name to it, go into Operations, hit Rename, and rename it. If you put something in that you don't want in there anymore, hit Operations and archive it. Drop it to the bottom. Nothing in the system is ever deleted. It's always there. If it's down in Archives, you need to pull it back up in. You can go down where it says Operations down there, and you can pull it right back in as well. Just that Operations tab. Operations tab and Actions tab are your big two tab items, and your Save tab is huge.
I got a question. I don't know how, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Yes, but we have Bridget's hand was up first. I don't know if you want to.
Okay, that's fine. I just didn't want to get passed up and forget it. Go ahead, Bridget.
Bridget?
I'm good. I'm good. John actually answered it in the chats. It was a question about what if you have an amendment after you go through all that process.
Terrific. Thank you, Bridget. Mike, go ahead.
Okay, sorry for interrupting. I just didn't want to get further down the road before we got past this section. I emailed a HUD to Sandy through this checklist last week, and I'm assuming that she received it and that it was done correctly. And I don't know if it was, but I did use the documents section. No, I didn't. I went into transactions and I went into the checklist, and then I emailed the HUD to Sandy through checklist, and that's all I did.
Okay, this is Sandy.
Hey, Sandy.
Hey, right now I'm finishing up the 1099s because they're due today. I've been signing DAs, I've been walking agents through. To be totally honest, closing out transactions has been last on my list.
Okay,
So-
not even worried about that.
Yeah,
I'll
my goal is to finish that by the end of the week. And if there's something we need done differently, I'll let you know.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just wanting to ask Ben or James if that's what I do. I wasn't worried about you receiving it one way or the other. Okay, so I went into the system and I sent it to her through checklist, and that's all I did with that HUD after the closing.
And Mike, that is correct, because I want to just help you a little bit with some of the lingo. When you say you send her the HUD, that sounds like you actually emailed her the HUD. If you're using the checklists, you're not actually sending her anything. You're sending her an alert that says, "Dear Sandy, my HUD is in my documents folder. Please log in and check it out." So you're not actually taking papers and sending it to her. What you're doing is you're drawing her attention to your file and inviting her to come in, because otherwise she would not know to go look for that HUD. Now, she has access to your file. She can go anytime she feels like it because she's a manager. But you want her in at a specific time because some event has transpired that causes you to want to bring it to her attention. So when you're in the checklist, you are actually flagging whatever documents you want her to look at. Like in this case, by the third checklist over here, you're telling her F710 amendment due diligence and F507 earnest money. That's what you want her to pay attention to. So you're alerting her to draw her attention to these two documents, which she will then log in and see these documents here in the Documents tab.
Okay.
Okay, that's
Yep.
not to be confused, my friends, with Actions and downloading documents. Okay, because you can download documents. You can go to Actions and you can download whatever documents you want to your local desktop computer, and you can share them with people, right? You don't want to share documents with Sandy or John or James in that fashion, because you're actually stripping the documents out of Total Brokerage, attaching them to your Gmail or Comcast or Yahoo, now sending them new documents to look at. All you should have done is alerted them to the documents are in my file. Please take a look at them. You don't go to the copy machine and make photocopies of the documents that are in your file, print them out, and then walk over to James's office and hand them to him. You say, hey, James, my file's on your desk. Please look at my file and make sure you like what you see there. Does that make sense, Mike?
It does.
Okay.
Not
Ben,
really, but I'm kind of with you.
hey, Ben,
Sir.
in the checklist, if you don't mind going back there real quick, as I change things and tweak things to make things better and more effective and efficient, at the very top, if you've already started a transaction and I make some changes tomorrow, that checklist is not going to change. Your next transaction will show the new checklist. But if you wanted to change the checklist, you can click on change and drop a new checklist in, but then you would have to start over the whole process. I recommend you do not do that.
Uh-oh, you moved all the way back to the left-hand side and all the check marks are gone. You're
Yes.
starting over with a whole new process.
I don't recommend you do that. However, I do want you to know, as I make changes and try to make this as smooth and easy as I possibly can for each of you, new checklist will develop as transactions take place. We got a buyer's checklist, a seller's checklist, a landlord checklist, a tenant checklist. I'm creating a commercial checklist. I'm creating a new construction checklist. There's a lot of things that are going to come about with the system to try to make your lives as easy as possible. I want you producing, but at the same time, and what most people don't understand, Ben, is that last year in 2020, in a pandemic year, in an election year, we closed 3,000 closings. 3,000 closings. And so we had to go in and implement, and thank you for that, a new system, because when you go to 3,000 to 5,000 closings, we have to make sure that we're staying in compliance with the Georgia Real Estate Commission. So I want to make people understand that I just didn't decide last year to wake up and say, I'm going to make everybody's life miserable and I'm going to create a new product. I looked at SkySlope, I looked at BrokerMint, I looked at BrokerSumo, I looked at Zip Forms, I looked at all kinds of stuff and took a 6-month period and studied all these different forms. And when I found your system, Ben, I found it to be the absolute best for what I think we should use for the agent to be able to start from the contact point with that client, run them through a contract, through closing to post-closing in one platform. And for example, there's a company that I'll mention, Virtual Properties. They have 3,500 agents. They use 7 different platforms. I do not want 7 different platforms. And that's why I was thankful that I was able to find you in this program. Is it a learning curve? Absolutely. Absolutely. Will we get through it? My guess is by March, we're going to be sliding through this thing faster than you can imagine, and it's going to really work well. But please, please, please be patient as we all learn this together. When Dotloop rolled its system out, everybody didn't know what Dotloop was about. Everybody didn't know what Transaction Desk was about. You've got to be patient, and that's why Ben has been so gracious to do these webinars to help us. We're going to continue to make it better. We're going to make it customizable to our company and no other company. So when you log into Southern Classic Realtors total brokerage page, it is specifically for us. Ben is in numerous states. He's in foreign countries. It's a big company. And so I'm very grateful for this, Ben, and we do have a commitment with you, and I am passionate about this, and I'm moving forward with this. And so I just want to make that very clear to everybody. And I appreciate it. We have to do this, and we're going to keep growing. We're at 335 agents. Probably another year or so would be 500 agents. Next thing we're going to be 1,000 agents, and we have to have a system in place to help everybody.
James, I can't appreciate enough what you said. Thank you for the very kind words and the testimonial. And I'm so glad you did your homework to pick us out. I do want to show your agents why we are so award-winning. It's not just our software, it's our customer service. What do you do rather than bang your head on the keyboard in frustration when you're lost, confused, or not sure what to do? It is so simple. When you're inside of Total Brokerage and you need help, look at your name on the top right-hand corner. And next to your name, there's a question mark. We all know question marks ask questions. You click on that question mark button, and we have thousands of very short, simple to read layperson articles that you can read on any topic you want. You just search for whatever it is you're looking for, and we will show you exactly what you're looking to do. If you find that the article is confusing, or you can't find it, or you're just annoyed, that's fine too. We are here to help you. You can contact our office by calling this number, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time. We're in Florida, same time zone as you. But please try the article search first because it's faster. But if you want, you can call us. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning, we're not answering your call at 2 o'clock in the morning. Create a support ticket. Click it, tell us what your issue is. We get back to you lightning fast. And what's amazing is we don't send customer service, we don't send support tickets to Bangladesh or to Indonesia or to Nairobi like our competitors do. Every single support ticket, every phone call, every email comes into my office in Boca Raton. And if you're getting help on total brokerage, you're getting help from a full-time salaried employee of our company. We don't subcontract any of our work. You might even get me because I answer a lot of the customer service stuff. So feel free to, number one, when you log in, look for the question mark on the top right-hand corner, search for whatever it is you want. There's thousands of articles. Number two, call the office. Number three, create a support ticket, and we will help you with super fast dispatch. I see some hands going up. Bridget?
Yeah, so on the financial tab for the DA, when I put my information in, the percent, the sales price, mine doesn't calculate out. What am I doing wrong?
Are you filling all these tabs over here across the board?
I am.
Okay, so you go to then you went to the commission tab, and this is what's not calculating?
No, on the financial tab, when I put in the 3% and the sales price, my commissions, do I have to put those in or do those
Oh,
self?
yes. You still have to enter in a dollar amount. Yes.
Okay, so
The
it doesn't.
math from here, it's not this number times this number. You still have to type in the commission because we
Okay.
find that so many agents end up kicking back $1,000 credit or $500 for repairs. The math has to be done manually.
Okay, one more quick question on, so like referrals, we were talking about like Zillow or OpCity or, Redfin or anything like that we do. We need to put in there. Is there an easy way to save like if I normally have it where my attorney sends the commission out to that person with an address? Is there a way to save that address in there for that referral?
Absolutely. You're going to add anyone you do business with, not customers, but the Keller Williams agent in New Jersey that referred to you or the attorney. You're going to add those people into your CRM, into vendors.
Okay.
Vendors are not buyers, sellers, landlords, and tenants. Buyers and sellers, landlords, and tenants are your contacts. Vendors are people you do business with. Referral sources up in New York and New Jersey, attorneys, landscapers, swimming pool technicians, mold remediators, all those guys, okay? You'll add them into vendors because then you can bring them into a transaction because all their business card has now been uploaded with all their contact information, so it's easy to cut checks to them directly, okay? If you're in this transaction over here and you type on the people tab and there is a referral party, you can add that person in. Check this out under vendors right here, add a vendor. And this is going to be a broker. This is going to be a broker up in New Jersey. Let's see if I have one in here. Keller, let's add a person's name. Steve Jobs. We're going to add him in. And anyone in the company can see this. This is going to be Keller Williams Apple Realty. And his email is steve@kw.com. I'm going to save that. So now, not only is Steve Jobs from Keller Williams in this transaction, but anytime I want his information, I can view the vendor and I've got all of his address, his phone number, his email address, everything's there, which is again, especially helpful, Bridget. If I'm on my cell phone and I bring this up on my iPhone, I can see all of Steve's information right here.
Perfect. Thank you.
You got it. My pleasure. Good question. Thank you.
Bridget, this is Sandy. The other thing you can do is when you email your attorney, the DA, email them a copy straight out of total brokerage of the referral agreement. In that same, when you're emailing them the DA, email them the referral agreement, and then the attorney will have the address on the referral agreement.
Watch, Bridget. Top of the page, actions, share documents, and share it with a lawyer. Okay,
Ben, can you please share your screen?
I think, Bridget, I am sharing, right? You can see my screen, Bridget, or no?
Yeah,
James, can you see my screen?
yep.
James, you can see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. I will try to stop sharing and I'll try to reshare again if it's not showing for you. I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna go to reshare again, share screen, and it should hopefully be sharing for you now. If you want to share documents, like we just explained to Bridget, actions on the top of the page, share documents. And then you'll be able to email those documents right to the attorney. Okay? Other questions that we haven't yet covered today?
When you were talking about the other referral, will it populate into the DA once you enter him in as a vendor?
Yes, ma'am.
It's mapped into the referral, which would be item number 3 on the DA. You might have to type in Op City there, but the dollar amount, if you were given Op City 30% and you put that on the financial tab in the referral section, it should automatically go into the DA. And again, if you see something that doesn't, either let me know so I can get with Matt and the engineers at TV to get this fixed, or you can simply type on it. You can click on that box, you can unassign it and retype something back in its place, so that you can make it correct before you save it and send it to Sandy to sign.
And I think we can add a text box to put the referral address,
You
correct?
could, you could.
Because the attorneys will mail that referral check directly for you.
You could actually put a text box in there in a section that's kind of blank on the DA and type in, please mail check to Zillow at PO Box such and such if you wish to.
James, I asked that question, I had typed it in there. I had a contract go through, it was my listing contract. I had my checklist, it sold, went through the whole checklist, met the compliance. Well, now over the weekend it terminated. So if I go back in and click on that change for a new checklist, it's gonna remove all of my old checklist. So now I have to completely start over with my whole new listing again.
You shouldn't have to start over with your listing. So it was your list, help me with this. It was your listing. It went under contract and it terminated.
Correct.
You did not have the buyer, strictly you only had the seller, correct?
Correct.
And then it terminated, so that then dies. And so you bring in a new offer, you have a new transaction. I would just create a new transaction for that particular client.
I would always create a new transaction because each transaction is so specific. Think about that property tab. Think about the financials tab. Think about the commission tab. Think about the documents tab. In
But
fact,
it's my listing.
I understand it's your
wouldn't
listing.
it all be that same transaction?
Okay, if it's your listing, you can take all the dead documents for the dead deal, and those you can file away. Let me go back to share screen. Okay. So all the documents you've been utilizing, purchase contract disclosures, you can take every one of those documents and mark them as archived if you want to, and then you can go ahead and you can change the tabs. When I said a new transaction, I was referring to one buyer making multiple offers on multiple properties, or if you are the listing agent and you have the buyer. If you are the listing agent and Coldwell Banker makes an offer on your listing and that deal dies, I would file those documents and maintain that one file and replace everything with the new Keller Williams and the new Remax offers that you get down the road.
Sure.
But if you're the listing agent and you're double ending the deal, I'd create a second transaction. If your
Okay,
customer is
so-
the buyer and the buyer makes 6 offers on 6 properties, I would make 6 different transactions. Does
Sure,
that help
but
you?
in that listing checklist for that transaction, I can't create a new checklist.
Yes, you can. I'm in the checklist right now. The deal dies. All these check marks are no longer any good because I've now wasted my time on this transaction that is dead. So I want a fresh checklist. All I do is go to change and create a fresh checklist. And now my turtle goes back to 0 and all my document checklists are clear.
So, and that's what I was saying is that then I have to start from scratch. So I'll need to send the listing contract again to John to be approved again, to commit through compliance, because the checklist is going to start over.
No, because that's later in the transaction, right? When you have a seller checklist, that goes all the way through exclusive seller. Let's see, how far do you go?
We can fix that, Ben. We can put the same thing there. We can put a red circle there that they can pass by that if it's already been compliance, because there's no sense in having a compliance document 2 or 3 times.
No. You should, what you should do, James, I don't know at what point on your checklist is request review, but I'm guessing that John is requesting a review once the listing agreement is fully executed. Is that correct or no?
Yes, if you look right there, the first one says exclusive seller brokerage. Well, you're, are you on a broker one? Or
Yeah, I'm on a seller checklist. You should lock down the file at this point so they don't have to go back to 0, right? So I don't know how far you go before you request review, but that's the point at which we should lock down the file and not make them go backwards.
Right, that's what I was hoping, not to go backwards with my listing, just be able to put in the new purchase contract if it gets terminated.
So far, everything I'm checking off in this seller checklist is all things that will not change no matter how many buyers, how many offers you have. This here is where we lock it down, right here. Once it's locked down, right, and John is going to sign off, he's going to pass this. So now it's been locked down, all these fields are checked, all the documents are locked in place. This is where it starts to get hairy with a new purchase contract that may or may not get canceled, right? So this is where you may go backwards. If you get through some of these check marks, you may only just back out these check marks here, because even if you've gone this far in the field and the buyer pulls out or the buyer gets denied for mortgage, only up until this point will you back out these documents, as you see me doing here, to re-upload new documents from the new buyer that's making an offer. Does that make sense?
Because you archive those documents down and you brought new ones in for a new buyer, then you can then go right there and put those in there from that point forward.
And once John signs off on compliance, you don't have to go back and redo those things because he's approved everything up until here. You only have to start from here, the executed new purchase contract.
Yep, I got it.
Does that, I don't know who was speaking, but does that answer whoever's question it was?
Yes, well, so my question is, then I don't go back and change the checklist. I'm just going to undo those check marks to be able to add in a new contract.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. In that particular scenario, you are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. James, I'm gonna have to get running because I have another training lined up. Is there any last minute questions from anybody? Anybody else? Okay. I don't see any other hands. If not, this is our last opportunity. We are doing this again later in the week. James, is our next appointment tomorrow, is it?
We're actually doing it tomorrow again from 11:30 to 1. And
11:30 to 1 tomorrow. It's the
recap.
exact same thing. So for my friends that were here today, for the 54 of you that I see, you're welcome to come tomorrow and you're invited, but it's exactly the same thing. We're just doing a replication of today. I did record today on video. I'm going to send James the link so that he can share it with everybody, and he's making a total brokerage library for you for videos. But tomorrow is nothing new. Welcome to come back, but it might just be boring for you to hear the same thing again, or it might be a better learning process to hear it a second time, whatever you wish.
Anytime you see a movie the second time, you catch things you missed the first time.
Thank you all for your patience and your great questions and being so cooperative. Thanks for the great attendance. James, thank you for all the nice things you said about us and for even helping me out by answering some questions. I appreciate that so much. And to my compliance officers and bookkeeping team, thank you for participating as well. I hope everyone has an awesome day. Happy, healthy New Year again. And I'll see some of you back tomorrow. If not, you know how to reach us using the question mark button on the top of the page by checking the videos and checking the search library of all of our articles, calling the office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, or submitting a service ticket 24/7, okay?
Thanks,
Thanks,
Ben.
everybody. See you tomorrow, James. Thanks, everyone.
Sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.